here on the Mayo Media Network for Tuesday, February 8th. My name is Cecil Peters and I will be going over tonight's action with you, and it feels good to be back betting on hockey after the 4-day All-Star break. We got a little taste of the action last night with a 2-game slate, but we are back with a full night of hockey, at least 4 games every night, basically until the end of February, where I think the last day of February we have only 3 games, and then it gets back to a bunch of big slates. So the NHL has really got a bunch of games jammed together for the foreseeable future here. So basically, until the end of the regular season, there are plenty of games to bet on each and every night. Stretch run should be really exciting. There's a lot of playoff battles in the Western Conference. The final playoff seedings aren't really figured out yet. In the East, the playoff seeding does appear to be more clear, at least the 8 teams that should be in the playoffs. A couple minor chances for some teams like the New York Islanders to jump into a playoff spot, but it seems unlikely. Eastern Conference is going to be more focused on what teams end up with home ice advantage for the playoffs. And then the Western Conference, there will be a much more tight battle. Teams like the LA Kings, the Anaheim Ducks, all fighting for playoff spots, wildcard spots in the Western Conference. Before we get to tonight's 7 games, please remember to give this video a like wherever you are watching or listening. If it's on podcast, give it a like on your preferred podcast feed. And if you are watching it on YouTube, please leave a comment with who you think is going to meet in the Stanley Cup Finals this year. I've been kind of going back and forth on this, but right now I really like how the Pittsburgh Penguins are looking in the East. You know they're going to make an addition at the trade deadline to get kind of stronger on the back end. Their kind of only real weakness is maybe depth there. So they've got great goaltending. The offense, when fully healthy, which it finally is getting close, is pretty unmatched across the league. They're deep. They have the experience. And on the Western Conference side of things, once Jack Eichel gets back in the mix, this Vegas Golden Knights team is going to be extremely hard to beat. So right now, Pittsburgh-Vegas would probably be my prediction for the Stanley Cup Final. But some trade deadline acquisitions could definitely shake things up, especially on the Western Conference side of things. On to the games for tonight. We're going to start with a game with 2 teams coming in off a back-to-back. Carolina played in Toronto last night. Ottawa played against New Jersey. I am recording this before those games happened, as I get this recording done the day before, so I'm not sure what the outcomes were in those games, but I don't think it really matters. Carolina is going to be heavily favored regardless. They're clearly the better team. They are one of those teams that is battling for a top spot in the Eastern Conference. They want to get home ice throughout the playoffs. And Ottawa, they're out of the mix for a playoff spot. They're just trying to stay out of the league's basement unless they are trying to tank and get that first overall draft pick. But watching them play, I really don't get that vibe with them. They do seem to be competitive in every game. Their goaltending has gotten a little better. So Ottawa, who's actually played Carolina pretty well so far this year, taking them to overtime and losing in a shootout one game. They actually did beat the Hurricanes as well earlier this year. They're not a team that gives up easily. They don't have the talent and the depth that Carolina does, so Carolina should win this game. But they're so heavily favored, minus 280 at DraftKings Sportsbook while I record this. The only time I really like betting on a favorite in that scenario is if I feel confident enough to bet them to win in regulation. And with the way the games between these 2 teams have gone so far this year, I just don't quite feel it. If Ottawa was a little healthier up front, I would consider making them a big underdog bet here, but I'm just going to stay away from this game for the night. Probably look at Tim Stützle and maybe Brady Tkachuk for a shot prop. Next game is a matchup between 2 really elite teams, 2 of the best defensive teams in the National Hockey League. The Pittsburgh Penguins coming into Boston. Penguins, slight underdogs, plus 105 here. Boston had a really hot stretch after the holiday break, winning a ton of games. They've slowed down a little bit lately. Their defense has been as good as usual. Goaltending's been a little shaky, and the offense just hasn't been clicking at 5-on-5 lately. Pittsburgh's a tough team to beat, especially with the top line of Jake Gunsel, Brian Rust, and Sidney Crosby buzzing as they are right now. The one concern I do have with Pittsburgh, Evgeny Malkin is now on the COVID list, so that takes away their second-line center. He was playing really good in his return from injury to start the year. So he added a lot of secondary scoring to this Pittsburgh Penguins team. Not quite as good without him, but they do have guys like Jeff Carter and Evan Rodriguez who have been stepping up all season long. A short-term absence for Evgeny Malkin, not a big deal for this Pittsburgh Penguins team. If Malkin was playing, plus 105 would be a bet that I would make. But with him out of the lineup, probably just going to stay away unless the odds change for this game. Next game is a game between 2 teams that are well out of playoff contention. The New Jersey Devils plus 105 in Montreal. Montreal minus 125. New Jersey on the second half of a back-to-back, missing their two top players in Jack Hughes and Dougie Hamilton. They're also missing their two starting goalies to start the year, so now they have John Gillies and Akira Schmidt in net, both not NHL quality goalies. The only positive I can see for the Devils in this game is that Montreal, equally weak. They've also got Jake Allen and Carey Price on the shelf, so their goaltending is not NHL quality as well. But the offense is starting to get healthy for Montreal. They're about as healthy as they've been all year up front, so I do like the Montreal Canadiens to get some goals in this game. I do think they can out-goaltend the New Jersey Devils. It's one of the few teams they have an advantage over in net. So even as a slight favorite, I do like the Montreal Canadiens here. Probably not quite enough to bet on them at -125, but they should win this game. Next game is the Columbus Blue Jackets at Washington. We got Columbus plus 210 on the money line, Washington -265. The big question for me in this game is, will Alex Ovechkin be ready to go? He missed the last game before the All-Star break as a late addition to the COVID list. He missed the entire All-Star break as well, so depending on his latest results, he may or not be ready to play. I know he will be kind of done that 5-day window for COVID, but depending on how his tests go, probably won't know that until the afternoon before the game. Without that info, this game is hard to bet on. Columbus has been horrendous defensively, giving up a ton of shots. They gave up 62 to Calgary a couple weeks back. Giving up over 40 shots on a night is pretty routine for them. Not a good sign for success. The goalies are starting to look a little bit fatigued, but after the All-Star break, they should have at least a little bit of a bump for a few games. And if Ovechkin's out for the Capitals, the power play, there's a whole lot less lethal. It looked downright bad against Edmonton in their last game before the break. Their goaltending has also been questionable. Vitek Vanacek, their best goalie so far this year, has been out the last little while. Ilya Samsonov got pulled against Edmonton after allowing 3 early goals. So I don't love the goaltending in Washington. I think this is a great spot for Columbus to actually pile up some offense. Patrick Laine is on a hot streak right now, 4 goals in his last 4 games. The offense has been decent following his lead. So at plus 210, if Alex Ovechkin does not play in this game, I am going to take the Columbus Blue Jackets. And even if Ovechkin plays, I still think they are worth the risk at the big odds. Next game here is Minnesota -140 at Winnipeg. Winnipeg is plus 120. This line just seems way off to me, and it is Hammer City on the Minnesota Wild, who are absolutely buzzing at the moment. They've won their past 6 games. Winnipeg, meanwhile, has only won once in their last 6, making this a matchup of 2 teams heading in opposite directions. Minnesota should be -170 in my opinion, even on the road, and I'm sure they'll get there shortly. So if you see anything -150 or better, that is a very viable bet. The top 3 lines are all scoring. The defense is playing extremely well, and the goaltending has been fine. Winnipeg's horrible defensively, and the only player they have capable of creating offense right now seems to be Kyle Connor. This is a massive mismatch, and the odds just don't reflect that. Kirill Kaprizov and Kevin Fiala will have their way with the Minnesota defense, and the Wild should win big. Next game on the night is in Edmonton. It's another one I was kind of surprised to see the odds. Vegas -110, Edmonton -110. I did expect Vegas to be more heavily favored in this game, and I think that is probably where the line eventually ends up. But at -110, betting on the Vegas Golden Knights is an easy call for me, especially with them returning to full health. The only real question mark I have with Vegas is if Chandler Stevenson will be off the COVID list or not. A bet against the Edmonton Oilers is terrifying no matter what, as Connor McDavid can take over against any team, but nothing they have done lately suggests that they deserve to be anything close to even money against this Vegas team that is favored to win the Pacific Division. Edmonton did win most of their games coming into the break, but none of them were against really good opponents. They did lose to Ottawa in overtime, and they blew a 3-goal lead against Washington right before the break. Both kind of concerning signs to me, so I don't think that Edmonton deserves the number they're at right now, especially if Chandler Stevenson can come out of COVID protocol for Vegas. That'll give them a fully healthy forward unit minus Jack Eichel. With the top 2 lines fully healthy like that, goaltending advantage for Vegas, defense advantage for Vegas, I see no reason not to bet on the Vegas Golden Knights until they get to about -140. Last game of the night is in Vancouver, the Arizona Coyotes. Big underdogs plus 210 against Vancouver. Arizona got obliterated by the Calgary Flames in terms of possession in their last game before the break, giving up 50 shots in the loss. However, the night before, they beat Colorado in a shootout, and even against Calgary, they were able to keep the score relatively close. They have been getting better results than they have been all season long lately, and I think the plus 210 number is enough to justify a bet against Vancouver. Vancouver isn't quite as bad as their spot in the standings suggest, but they also aren't as good as the -1 or a -265 line says that they are. Arizona getting offense from Clayton Keller, Nick Schmaltz, Alex Galchenyuk lately, and that's been more than enough to keep them competitive, especially if their goalies keep playing the way that they have been lately. I will take a chance on a big underdog here to end the slate. So to recap, I'm betting on Arizona and Columbus as big dogs at +210, Vegas at -110, and the Minnesota Wild at -140. Both of the underdogs hitting is probably unrealistic, but even one hitting would be a fantastic finish to the night. The players I'm looking towards for shot props, which aren't available yet, are Tim Stützle from Ottawa, Nico Hischier for the Devils, Patrick Laine for Columbus, Joel Eriksson Ek for Minnesota, and Max Pacioretty for Vegas. If I get decent lines on any of those guys, I will be hitting those bets as well. And that's a wrap for today, and we will be back for tomorrow to preview another 6-game slate. Thanks for watching.